The rain tapped gently against the wide glass windows of the office, a soothing sound that contrasted sharply with the storm brewing in Amelia Carter's heart. At just 29, Amelia was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech empires in the country. Her name was synonymous with success, innovation, and luxury. To the outside world, she had it all: money, power, and the kind of life most people only dreamed of. Her glossy black hair, sharp tailored suits, and flawless confidence were admired by millions. Yet inside she felt a strange emptiness that all the riches of the world couldn't fill. It was as if something fundamental about her life didn't quite add up, like a song missing its last note. On that cold afternoon, she sat at her desk, staring at a single envelope placed in front of her by her assistant. "Your father left this for you," the assistant had whispered, her tone unusually soft. Amelia's adoptive father, Henry Carter, had passed away just 3 months earlier. He had been a man of incredible warmth, a self-made millionaire who taught her everything about resilience and love. The envelope was sealed with his familiar handwriting, the kind that always made Amelia feel safe, but this time her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside, there was a single letter and an old photograph. The photo showed a young couple she didn't recognize, holding a newborn baby wrapped in a faded blue blanket. Her heartbeat quickened as she unfolded the letter. The words were simple but shattering. "Amelia, there is something you deserve to know. You were adopted. We wanted to tell you, but we feared losing you. We loved you beyond words, and I hope you can forgive us for not saying this sooner." Her breath caught in her throat. Adopted. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in around her. The people she had always called Mom and Dad, the ones who had cheered her on at every school recital, who had comforted her when she cried, who believed in her when no one else did, were not her biological parents. 1,000 questions flooded her mind all at once. Who were these people in the photo? Why had they given her up? Did they even know she existed now? Amelia tried to focus on her breathing, but the flood of emotions was overwhelming. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was more like a hollow ache, a crack opening in the foundation of her identity. She had built her entire empire on confidence and clarity, yet in one moment she felt like a stranger in her own life. Even the success she once cherished, the money, the luxury, the admiration, seemed meaningless compared to this burning need to know the truth. She closed her eyes, memories of her childhood rushing back, her father's warm laughter, her mother's gentle hands braiding her hair every morning. Were they less her parents now because of this revelation? The answer was both yes and no. She loved them with all her heart, but she couldn't shake the feeling that a piece of herself had always been missing, and now she finally understood why. Later that night, Amelia sat alone in her penthouse apartment, the city lights flickering beneath her like stars trapped on Earth. She held the photograph again, studying the faces of the couple who might have brought her into this world. There was something hauntingly familiar about the woman's eyes, the curve of her smile, a mirror of something Amelia had seen in her own reflection, but could never explain. For years, people had said she didn't resemble her parents, and she had laughed it off, saying she must take after some distant relative. Now it all made sense. The next morning, Amelia couldn't concentrate on work. She cancelled meetings, something she never did. For someone who had fought tooth and nail to build a multi-million-dollar company from the ground up, this new quest for answers felt even more urgent. She needed to find them, the people who gave her life. Not to replace her adoptive parents, but to fill the silent gap inside her soul. But where would she start? She didn't even have a name, just a picture and a faint hope that someone somewhere might know who these strangers were. As the day turned into evening, Amelia sat by her father's old desk at the Carter mansion, hoping to find some clue he might have left behind. She went through old drawers, journals, and photo albums. And then she found it. A folded note with a single name and a town she had never heard of. Her pulse quickened. Could this be the start of everything she had been searching for? She didn't know that what she was about to uncover would not only change her life, but also shock everyone around her, in ways no one could have imagined. Before we dive into today's story, I'd love to ask for your support. Subscribing helps us keep bringing you real stories that touch the heart and inspire reflection. The rain tapped gently against the wide glass windows of the office, a soothing sound that contrasted sharply with the storm brewing in Amelia Carter's heart. At just 29, Amelia was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech empires in the country. Her name was synonymous with success, innovation, and luxury. To the outside world, she had it all: money, power, and the kind of life most people only dreamed of. Her glossy black hair, sharp-tailored suits, and flawless confidence were admired by millions, yet inside, she felt a strange emptiness that all the riches of the world couldn't fill. It was as if something fundamental about her life didn't quite add up, like a song missing its last note. On that cold afternoon, she sat at her desk, staring at a single envelope placed in front of her by her assistant. "Your father left this for you," the assistant had whispered, her tone unusually soft. Amelia's adoptive father, Henry Carter, had passed away just 3 months earlier. He had been a man of incredible warmth, a self-made millionaire who taught her everything about resilience and love. The envelope was sealed with his familiar handwriting, the kind that always made Amelia feel safe. But this time, her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside, there was a single letter and an old photograph. The photo showed a young couple she didn't recognize, holding a newborn baby wrapped in a faded blue blanket. Her heartbeat quickened as she unfolded the letter. The words were simple but shattering. "Amelia, there is something you deserve to know. You were adopted. We wanted to tell you, but we feared losing you. We loved you beyond words, and I hope you can forgive us for not saying this sooner." Her breath caught in her throat. Adopted. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in around her. The people she had always called Mom and Dad, the ones who had cheered her on at every school recital, who had comforted her when she cried, who believed in her when no one else did, were not her biological parents. 1,000 questions flooded her mind all at once. Who were these people in the photo? Why had they given her up? Did they even know she existed now? Amelia tried to focus on her breathing, but the flood of emotions was overwhelming. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was more like a hollow ache, a crack opening in the foundation of her identity. She had built her entire empire on confidence and clarity, yet in one moment she felt like a stranger in her own life. Even the success she once cherished, the money, the luxury, the admiration, seemed meaningless compared to this burning need to know the truth. She closed her eyes, memories of her childhood rushing back, her father's warm laughter, her mother's gentle hands braiding her hair every morning. Were they less her parents now because of this revelation? The answer was both yes and no. She loved them with all her heart, but she couldn't shake the feeling that a piece of herself had always been missing, and now she finally understood why. Later that night, Amelia sat alone in her penthouse apartment, the city lights flickering beneath her like stars trapped on Earth. She held the photograph again, studying the faces of the couple who might have brought her into this world. There was something hauntingly familiar about the woman's eyes, the curve of her smile, a mirror of something Amelia had seen in her own reflection but could never explain. For years, people had said she didn't resemble her parents, and she had laughed it off, saying she must take after some distant relative. Now it all made sense. The next morning, Amelia couldn't concentrate on work. She cancelled meetings, something she never did. For someone who had fought tooth and nail to build a multi-million-dollar company from the ground up, this new quest for answers felt even more urgent. She needed to find them, the people who gave her life. Not to replace her adoptive parents, but to fill the silent gap inside her soul. But where would she start? She didn't even have a name, just a picture, and a faint hope that someone, somewhere, might know who these strangers were. As the day turned into evening, Amelia sat by her father's old desk at the Carter mansion, hoping to find some clue he might have left behind. She went through old drawers, journals, and photo albums. And then she found it, a folded note with a single name and a town she had never heard of. Her pulse quickened. Could this be the start of everything she had been searching for? She didn't know that what she was about to uncover would not only change her life, but also shock everyone around her, in ways no one could have imagined. Amelia's black luxury car rolled through winding country roads, far from the bustling city skyline she was so accustomed to. The name written on the note, Eleanor Davis, was etched into her mind. It was paired with the name of a small rural town she had barely heard of. As she drove, questions circled in her head like restless birds. Was Eleanor her mother? Would they even want to see her? Or had they forgotten her, moved on with their lives, maybe even regretted her existence? The fear of rejection, a feeling she rarely knew, clung to her chest. Arriving in the town felt like stepping into another world. There were no tall buildings or shiny cars, just simple houses, narrow streets, and people who looked like they had worked hard all their lives. Amelia, in her perfectly tailored suit and polished heels, felt strangely out of place. She parked near a small bakery and stared at the slip of paper with the address scribbled by her father. Her hand hesitated on the door handle. For a woman who negotiated million-dollar deals without flinching, this moment made her feel like a frightened child. She walked down the gravel path, her heels sinking slightly into the uneven ground. The house was small, with faded paint and a front porch that seemed tired from years of sun and rain. When she knocked, an elderly woman with soft grey hair and kind but weary eyes opened the door. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her voice gentle but uncertain. Amelia's lips parted, but the words refused to come. She had rehearsed this in the car 100 times, yet now she felt her throat tighten. I think you might know who I am," Amelia finally said, holding out the photograph. The woman's eyes widened, and her hand trembled as she reached for the image. Her breath caught. Tears formed in her eyes before she even spoke. This is you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You're my daughter." The words hung in the air like thunder. Amelia felt both dizzy and frozen. She had prepared herself for the possibility, but hearing it confirmed was like being struck by lightning. Eleanor, her mother, pulled her close, hugging her as if trying to make up for decades of lost time. It was the first time Amelia had felt a mother's embrace that carried both blood and history. But along with warmth, there was pain. Why had they given her up? Why hadn't they tried to find her? Inside the small house, Amelia saw photographs of a life that might have been hers. Birthdays with homemade cakes, Christmas mornings with hand-sewn stockings, family gatherings with smiles that looked like hers. Eleanor sat her down and began to explain. "We were young and broke," Eleanor said, tears sliding down her cheeks. "We had nothing, Amelia, not even money to buy food. Your father worked 2 jobs, but we still couldn't give you the life you deserved. A kind couple, Henry and Margaret Carter, came to us. They promised they would love you, raise you, and give you every opportunity. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but I thought it was the right thing." Amelia listened, her heart torn in two. She understood their pain, but it didn't make the years of absence easier. "I had a good life," Amelia said softly. "They gave me everything, but I would have wanted to know you." Her voice cracked with emotion, and Eleanor held her hand tightly. They talked for hours, and with each story Eleanor shared, Amelia felt her world expanding, like finding the missing pieces of a puzzle she didn't know was incomplete. But there was another surprise waiting. Her biological father, James, was bedridden in a small back room, his health failing. When Amelia entered, his tired eyes lit up with recognition. You look just like Eleanor did when I met her," he said, his voice frail but full of awe. He reached for her hand, and in that moment Amelia realized that no amount of luxury or money could replace this connection, the raw, simple love between parents and their child. Yet, the visit was bittersweet. The house was crumbling, the roof leaking, and she noticed the cupboards half empty. Her heart ached. Here were the people who had given her life, struggling to survive, while she lived in a world of wealth and abundance. It felt unfair, almost cruel. That night, as she sat in her hotel room, Amelia couldn't sleep. She kept replaying every word Eleanor had said, every look in James's eyes. There was something she needed to do, something bigger than herself. But how could she help them, without making them feel small, without turning their gratitude into shame? The next morning she returned to the house with a plan. But before she could speak, Eleanor stopped her with trembling hands. "You don't owe us anything," she said, her voice firm. We gave you up because we wanted you to have more. We don't want to take anything from you now." Amelia smiled through her tears. "It's not about owing," she said softly. "It's about love. It's about family. Let me do this for you." What Amelia decided next would not only change their lives forever, but also leave everyone who heard her story in shock. And yet, her heart still carried a question. How would her adoptive mother feel about all this? Would she see it as betrayal? Or would she understand the depth of Amelia's love for both families? The following week, Amelia found herself back in the city, but her mind wasn't on business strategies or upcoming investor meetings. Her heart lingered in that small rural house with peeling paint, where her real story had begun. She felt torn between two worlds, the one she had built through ambition, money, and relentless pursuit of success, and the humble life of the people who had brought her into this world but never had the chance to raise her. Late one evening, Amelia stood in front of her adoptive mother's house, hesitant to ring the bell. Margaret Carter was a gentle woman, someone who had always believed that love was shown not in grand gestures, but in the small, quiet acts of care. Amelia loved her more than words could express, but the thought of telling her she had found her biological parents felt like betraying her. Margaret opened the door with a warm smile, one that softened Amelia's heart immediately. "You've been quiet these days, sweetheart," Margaret said, pulling her into a hug. "Something is bothering you, isn't it?" Amelia's throat tightened. She wanted to say everything, but she was afraid of hurting the woman who had given her so much more than just a home. "Mom, I found them," Amelia finally whispered, her voice trembling. Margaret's expression froze for a moment. The silence that followed felt heavy, as if time had stopped. "Them?" she asked softly, though she already understood. Amelia nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. Margaret sat down slowly, her hands resting on her lap. "I always knew this day might come," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Henry and I promised each other that we would tell you when the time was right, but we were afraid that knowing would make you love us less." Amelia knelt in front of her, holding her hands tightly. "No one could ever take your place," she said firmly. "You and Dad are my everything. I needed to see where I came from, to understand." Margaret's eyes filled with tears, but there was no anger in them, only deep, unconditional love. "Then I'm proud of you," Margaret said, brushing a strand of hair from Amelia's face. "Because knowing who you are doesn't change who we are. You're my daughter. That will never change." Relief flooded Amelia's heart, but she knew there was more she had to share. "Mom, they're struggling. They have nothing, and I can't ignore that. I want to help them, not because I feel obligated, but because I feel connected." Margaret smiled gently, her eyes reflecting both pride and sadness. "That's who you are, Amelia. You have a heart that gives. Do what you feel is right." The days that followed were filled with sleepless nights and endless thoughts. Amelia was not just a CEO anymore. She was a bridge between two families who had shaped her life in different ways. She decided to return to the small town, but this time, not as the millionaire CEO dressed in luxury fabrics and high heels. She wanted to show her biological parents that she wasn't there to flaunt money or success, but to bring them comfort and hope. When she arrived again, Eleanor was sitting on the porch, her eyes lighting up with surprise. "Amelia, you came back?" she asked, standing up quickly. "I had to," Amelia said with a warm smile. "There's something I need to do." That day, Amelia brought with her not just groceries and warm blankets, but a plan. She had already spoken to a construction team in town, arranging for repairs to their home. A new roof, fresh paint, a safe place for James to rest without worrying about leaks or cold drafts. She also created a trust fund to ensure they would never have to worry about basic needs again. But when Eleanor saw the plans, she shook her head, tears falling down her face. "This is too much," she whispered. "We don't want to take advantage of you. We gave you up so you could have more, not so you'd come back and carry our burdens." Amelia took Eleanor's hands gently. "You're not a burden," she said, her voice tender but firm. "You gave me life, and you gave me to the two people who gave me love beyond measure. This is my way of honoring both families. Let me do this not out of pity, but out of love. James, frail and lying in bed, called out from the other room. "Eleanor, let her help," he said with a soft smile when Amelia walked over to him. "She's got her mother's stubborn heart, and maybe mine too." In that moment, Amelia felt something shift deep inside her, a sense of purpose she hadn't felt even when building her company from the ground up. Money and luxury had once been her driving force, but now she realized that the real wealth was found in moments like this, where love connected broken pieces and healed old wounds. Yet even with this newfound clarity, there was still something she hadn't faced, her own heart. For years, Amelia had buried her emotions beneath work, success, and endless schedules. She had told herself she didn't have time for love, that it was a distraction. But as she sat in that small home with her biological parents, hearing their laughter despite their hardships, she began to wonder if maybe she had been missing out on the very thing that gave life meaning. She didn't know it yet, but a twist of fate was waiting for her that would bring this question crashing to the surface, in a way she never expected. The day Amelia returned to the city after finalizing the renovation plans for her biological parents' house, something inside her felt different. She walked into her company headquarters, a glass tower symbolizing ambition and power, but for the first time the walls seemed too cold and impersonal. Her employees greeted her with admiration, yet she realized that their praise no longer held the same meaning. Success was still important, but she now understood that money and luxury alone could never fill the spaces in the heart meant for connection, family, and love. As she sat in her corner office, Amelia's mind drifted back to Eleanor and James. She wondered how they were feeling now, if they truly understood her intentions. But before she could dwell too deeply, her assistant entered the room. "There's a man waiting in the lobby," she said, a hint of curiosity in her voice. "He says he used to know your father, Henry Carter. He insists it's important." Intrigued, Amelia went down to meet him. The man was tall, slightly rugged, with warm brown eyes that carried both pain and wisdom. He introduced himself as Daniel Reed, a former business partner of her late father. "I knew Henry when he was just starting out," Daniel said, his voice steady but emotional. "He talked about you all the time, said you were the reason he worked so hard, that every success he had was for you." Amelia felt a lump form in her throat. She had heard her father's stories of hardship, how he built his empire from nothing, but hearing it from someone else gave her a new perspective. Daniel went on, "Henry once told me something that stuck with me. He said, 'Riches are meaningless without love.' He believed that the true measure of a person's success was how much they gave back." Those words pierced Amelia's heart. They echoed her own recent thoughts about helping Eleanor and James. She invited Daniel to her office and they talked for hours about her father's early days, his dreams, and how he never stopped believing in kindness even when faced with betrayal and setbacks. Daniel's presence felt strangely comforting, almost as if Henry had sent him to remind her of something she had forgotten. As days passed, Daniel became a frequent visitor. At first, their conversations revolved around business and memories of Henry, but soon they began sharing personal stories, their fears, their regrets, their hopes. For the first time in years, Amelia found herself laughing genuinely, her walls slowly crumbling. Daniel's sincerity and grounded nature were refreshing in her world of luxury and calculated appearances. One evening, as they walked through the city park, Amelia opened up about her discovery of being adopted. "It shook me to the core," she admitted, her voice soft but trembling. "I thought I knew who I was, but now everything feels different. Yet somehow I love my parents. Both sets. Even more." Daniel listened without judgment, his gaze warm and understanding. "Family isn't just about blood," he said. "It's about who shows up, who loves you without conditions. And from what I can see, you've been blessed with more love than most people ever find in a lifetime." His words stayed with her. That night, Amelia wrote a long letter to Eleanor and James, expressing not just gratitude but a promise to be present in their lives, to never let them feel forgotten again. She also visited Margaret the next day, bringing flowers and a soft smile. "Mom, I hope you know how much I love you," she said, her voice breaking slightly. Margaret hugged her, whispering, "I never doubted that for a moment." But Amelia's journey of healing was far from over. Daniel's presence was awakening feelings she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Love, real love, the kind that was not built on appearances or power, but on understanding and vulnerability. It scared her because for so long she had convinced herself she didn't need it. Yet every time Daniel looked at her, it felt like he saw the real Amelia. Not the CEO or the millionaire, but the woman who had been searching for her place in the world. That evening, while sitting alone in her apartment, Amelia looked at the photograph of Eleanor and James again. She remembered how Eleanor's hands trembled when they first hugged, how James's voice cracked when he said he was proud of her. The richness of that moment was worth more than all the money she had ever earned. Before ending the night, Amelia posted a heartfelt message to her private journal, a habit she rarely shared with anyone. She wrote, "Sometimes we spend our whole lives chasing success, only to realize the greatest treasure is found in the people who love us, even when we have nothing to offer but ourselves." And while Amelia's life was taking a new, softer direction, there was still one question burning quietly in the background. What would Daniel mean in her life? Was he just a friend, or was he the piece of her heart she didn't know she was missing? Before moving forward, Amelia wanted to hear from those who believed in her story. If you were in her place, would you have searched for your biological parents, or would you have left the past untouched? The following weeks brought a whirlwind of emotions for Amelia. Balancing her life as a millionaire CEO while reconnecting with her biological family felt like living in two different worlds at the same time. During the day, she attended board meetings, discussed future investments, and navigated the complexities of a growing empire. At night, however, she often found herself calling Eleanor to ask about the simplest things, her childhood habits, her first smile, or the story of her birth. Each conversation brought her closer to the people who had once let her go out of love, not out of abandonment. One Sunday afternoon, Amelia drove back to the small town, this time bringing Margaret with her. It was a meeting she had been nervous about, but she wanted her two mothers, one who had given her life and one who had raised her, to know each other. As they stood on the front porch, Eleanor opened the door, and for a moment, the two women simply looked at each other. No words were spoken at first, but their eyes said everything. There was no jealousy, no resentment, only mutual respect and gratitude. "I've always wanted to thank you," Eleanor said softly, taking Margaret's hands. "You gave my daughter the kind of life I never could have provided." Margaret, with tears in her eyes, shook her head. "No, I should be thanking you. Without your sacrifice, I would never have known the joy of being her mother." Amelia stood between them, overwhelmed by the moment. She realized that love wasn't divided between families, it only multiplied. As days passed, Amelia's connection with Daniel deepened. His grounded nature and simple perspective on life were like a breath of fresh air in her otherwise high-pressure world. He often reminded her of Henry, wise, kind, and unwilling to let wealth define who he was. One evening, Daniel invited Amelia to visit a community center he supported in the city. "These kids don't need much," he said. "Just someone to believe in them, the way Henry believed in you." Walking through the center, Amelia saw children with bright smiles despite having so little. Their joy reminded her of something she had forgotten, that the greatest luxury in life is found in the moments money can't buy. She decided to make a donation to the center, not as a CEO, but as Amelia, the girl who had once been given a second chance at life. But even as Amelia's heart grew warmer and more open, challenges emerged. News of her connection to her biological parents started to spread, and the media began painting stories, some kind, others cruel. Headlines questioned her motives. Is the young CEO trying to buy her birth parents' love? Amelia ignored the gossip, but deep inside it hurt. She had spent her life proving her worth through success, and now it felt like people were trying to reduce her actions to nothing but money. Daniel noticed her unease. "You don't owe the world an explanation," he told her. "The people who matter know the truth. Your heart speaks louder than any rumor." His words gave her strength, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the world would never fully understand. One night, Amelia sat by her adoptive father's old desk again. She opened one of his journals, and inside she found a note he had written years ago. If Amelia ever learns about her past, remind her that she was chosen twice. First by her birth parents' sacrifice, and second by our love. Those words brought her to tears. She realized that she had been loved in a way few people ever experienced. Her biological parents had given her life, while Henry and Margaret had given her the foundation to build her dreams. It wasn't a story of abandonment. It was a story of love that transcended circumstance. The next day, Amelia decided to do something bold. She invited both families, Eleanor, James, and Margaret, to a private dinner at her penthouse. She wanted to create a memory where no walls stood between them. The evening was filled with laughter, tears, and heartfelt stories. At one point, James, still frail but smiling, raised his glass. "To family," he said softly. "Not the one we're born into or the one we choose, but the one we're blessed to share." That night, Amelia watched the two families who had shaped her life sitting side by side. It was a sight that filled her with a warmth no amount of riches or luxury could ever match. And in that moment, she knew that the journey she had started, the search for truth, had led her to something far more valuable than she had imagined. But there was still one chapter of her heart left unresolved, and it had to do with Daniel. The way he looked at her across the table, the way his presence felt like home. Amelia couldn't ignore the possibility that her life, once driven by ambition, might now be leading her toward love. Yet she was scared. What if opening her heart meant risking the control she had fought so hard to maintain? As the night ended, Daniel walked her to the balcony. The city lights stretched endlessly before them. "You've changed," he said softly, looking at her with a mixture of admiration and something deeper. "Not in a bad way. You've become real." Amelia smiled faintly. "Maybe for the first time, I feel like I know who I am." The answer to what would happen next with Daniel, and how Amelia's journey of family and identity would shape her future, was something that was just beginning to unfold. Life had taken Amelia through a journey of discovery, pain, and healing. In a matter of weeks, she had gone from being the unshakable CEO who thought she had everything, to a woman who finally understood what true wealth meant. It wasn't in money or luxury, nor in the recognition she received from the world. True wealth was in love, the kind of love that was selfless, forgiving, and enduring. Her biological parents had given her life, and her adoptive parents had given her the tools to flourish. Both families had sacrificed and loved her in different ways, but all of it came from the same pure source. One night, as Amelia sat quietly in her apartment, she opened her father Henry's Bible, which she had kept since his passing. She had always known it was there, but she hadn't taken the time to really read it until now. As she turned the fragile pages, her eyes stopped on a verse highlighted in his handwriting. "Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you." Exodus 20:12. The words pierced her heart, like a warm light breaking through clouds. It didn't matter that she had two mothers and two fathers. They were all worthy of honor, because each had shaped her story. Amelia reflected on the fact that God had guided her life in ways she had never realized. She thought about how unlikely it was that a baby born to a struggling couple in a small town had grown to become a millionaire CEO, leading one of the most influential companies in the country. That wasn't just luck or hard work, it was divine providence. She remembered another verse she had once heard in church. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Jeremiah 29:11. Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes as she whispered to herself, it was always him. Her entire life had been stitched together by unseen hands, the love of her parents, both biological and adoptive, and the grace of God guiding her through every success and every trial. Suddenly all the questions that had haunted her, why did they give me up? Was I ever truly loved? Were answered. She was loved more than she had ever known. It took being adopted twice, in two different ways, to teach her that love was not bound by blood or circumstance, but was a gift that God himself designed. The next morning, Amelia visited both Eleanor and Margaret. She didn't just thank them for everything they had done, She told them about the reflection she had the night before. "I realized that God never abandoned me," she said softly. "He gave me two families, not one. He wrote my story with so much care that even the painful parts had a purpose." Margaret's eyes filled with tears, and Eleanor held Amelia's hands tightly, nodding as if they understood every word without her needing to say more. Later that day, Amelia spent time with James, who was still weak, but smiling more than before. "You remind me of the woman your mother always wanted to be," James told her. "Oh, you're strong, not because of your money, but because of your heart." His words reminded Amelia of a verse she had just read that morning. "Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins." 1 Peter 4:8. Love wasn't just an emotion. It was a force, a healing power that covered mistakes, bridged divides, and created hope where none seemed possible. Daniel, too, noticed a shift in her. She wasn't just the sharp, determined CEO anymore. She radiated a calm strength that came from something deeper. One evening, as they walked through the park, Amelia shared her reflection with him. "I used to think success was about how much you could build, how much money you could earn," she said. "But now I know that true success is about how much love you can give and how much you allow yourself to receive." Daniel smiled, his eyes holding hers for a moment longer than usual. "You sound like someone who's found peace," he said softly. Amelia nodded. "Maybe for the first time I have." Amelia's journey had become more than just her own story. It was a testament to how God works even in the hidden details of life. She began to see her role as not just a leader in business, but as someone who could use her position to bring hope to others. Inspired by her experience, she decided to start a foundation to help children who, like her, had been separated from their families. It wasn't charity out of guilt. It was an offering of gratitude. Through all of this, one truth echoed in Amelia's heart. Love is the greatest wealth a person can have. Money fades, luxury breaks, and power can crumble, but love remains. It was this truth that tied every chapter of her story together, from the sacrifice of Eleanor and James to the unwavering devotion of Henry and Margaret. And while her personal story felt like it had reached a moment of peace, Amelia's heart sensed there was still one step left to take, one part of her journey that would define the future. What would she do next with Daniel? Would she risk opening her heart to the possibility of a love that could change everything? The evening sky over the city was painted in hues of orange and purple as Amelia stood on the balcony of her penthouse. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about business strategies or quarterly reports. Instead, her mind wandered to the people who now filled her life with meaning. Eleanor and James, Margaret, and even Daniel, whose presence had become a quiet but steady force of comfort. Everything she had gone through, every tear and every revelation, had led her to this moment of clarity. That weekend, Amelia organized a dinner at her penthouse once again, but this time it was special. It wasn't just for her two families, she invited Daniel too. The long dining table was set with candles, soft golden lights, and an arrangement of white roses, her father's favorite flower. Eleanor and James sat on one side, their faces glowing with gratitude and newfound joy. Margaret sat beside them, smiling with a warmth that filled the room. Daniel, sitting at the far end, looked at Amelia as though he could see the woman she truly was. Not the CEO, not the millionaire, but the daughter, the friend, the woman who had chosen love over pride. As they shared stories and laughter, Amelia felt an overwhelming sense of peace. For so long, she had believed that success was a race, that life was about proving her worth. But now, surrounded by those she loved most, she realized she didn't need to prove anything. She had already won the greatest victory, the ability to forgive, to connect, and to love without fear. After dinner, Daniel approached her as the others enjoyed dessert. "You know," he said softly, "I think your father would be proud of you, not just for what you've built, but for who you've become." Amelia smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I hope so. For a long time I thought my strength came from being unstoppable, but now I see that true strength is letting your heart lead, even when it scares you." There was a long pause, the kind that feels like the world is holding its breath. Then Daniel reached for her hand. "You've given so much to everyone else, Amelia. Maybe it's time you let someone take care of you too. Her heart raced. For years she had built walls so high that no one could climb them, but Daniel had found a way through, not by force but by understanding. She didn't give him an answer right then, but the warmth in her smile told him that maybe, just maybe, her heart was ready to open. The following days, Amelia launched the foundation she had dreamed of. It would provide education, shelter, and mentorship for children who had been abandoned or placed in foster care, ensuring they felt valued and loved, just as she had been by both her families. At the opening ceremony, standing between Eleanor and Margaret, she delivered a heartfelt speech. "I've learned that true wealth isn't measured by money or luxury," she said, her voice firm yet emotional. "It's measured by how much love we are willing to give. I stand here today not as a CEO, not as a millionaire, but as someone who was given the gift of 2 families and a purpose greater than myself." The applause was warm, but what moved Amelia most was the look on Margaret's face and the tears in Eleanor's eyes. For the first time she felt like every part of her story, the pain, the secrets, the sacrifices, had been redeemed. She was not just Amelia Carter, the CEO. She was Amelia, the daughter, the bridge between 2 worlds, and perhaps soon, the woman who would finally allow herself to love. That night, as she returned home, she found Daniel waiting for her. "I saw your speech," he said with a soft smile. "You've become someone extraordinary, Amelia, and not because of your success, but because of your heart." She looked at him, realizing that her journey wasn't just about family, it was about letting herself live fully. The 2 of them sat under the stars, talking late into the night about dreams, fears, and faith. For once, Amelia wasn't thinking about tomorrow's meetings or deals. She was simply present, feeling the warmth of someone who cared for her, not because of her title or money, but because of who she truly was. As the city lights shimmered around them, Amelia knew that this was just the beginning. The story of the young CEO who discovered she was adopted had reached a happy ending, but her life was only opening new chapters. She was ready to embrace every twist and turn ahead, with her family, and possibly with Daniel by her side. And now, if you want to continue this journey with Amelia and explore other powerful stories of love, forgiveness, and faith, stay with us. Watch the next video on the screen. You won't want to miss it. Don't forget to subscribe and join us for more stories that remind us of what truly matters in life.